So we're in the middle of a series about dreams, and dreams are a weird one. I'm going to get to all that in a minute, but it's almost like we have created in our culture or in our imagination what a dream is supposed to look like. So much so that even preaching on the concept of God establishing dreams in our life, it's like a battle. It's like gravity that gets pulled into the misunderstanding. That's probably the reason that this sermon is worth preaching, is because it reestablishes potential for positive, biblical, godly thinking in the middle of that. There's probably the best example of a dream that is anywhere in the Bible, and it's amazing that we've made it all the way to week 3 or whatever this is without mentioning this story, but I'm going to read it to you. In Genesis chapter 37, this is where it starts. Verse 3 says, "Now Israel," remember, that was his name now, "Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him," a robe of many colors, ornate. "When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him." And don't act like boo hiss, because there is something in all of us that when somebody gets special treatment, there is something just human in us that goes, well, what makes him so special? He's not so great. Have you ever met somebody that was a hero and then you meet him and you're like, don't meet your heroes became a cliche for a good reason. So they're looking at Joseph and they're having this reaction of what makes you so great. And Joseph knows he's loved. Okay. Joseph had a dream. I'm going to try not to skip ahead. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had." So they're already mad at him. They already think he's the golden child, the ornate coat, which back in the day, by the way, you couldn't just run down the store and buy something. Like, it was a valuable, treasured thing to have a coat with colors. And here's his dream to them. They're already mad. They already think he's born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And here's what he said. "We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." Oh, you did. His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" What did Joseph, this is proof that Joseph was not fully developed in his maturity, because even if he had that dream, why would he have said it? Why would he have taken this dream in its just seedling form and gone and told it to the people that were the most likely to resent it? "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Verse 9, "Then he had another dream and he told it to his brothers." Didn't get the hint. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." Do you ever have somebody, you're supposed to say no, I'll say no, we'll all say no, but really, have you ever known somebody and things just go so well for them that really what you'd like to see, of course we would never say this, but what we'd like to see is just a little bit of a humbling of like, welcome to normality like the rest of us. I've known people in my life, just these like 5-star talented people, and it doesn't matter what they do. It just seems like it always works. The moon and the stars are bowing down to me, and they're going, okay, something's got to change. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him. So this is his father who loved him. So what we know already in the beginning is that Joseph did not have a good filter. And his dad, maybe in trying to protect Joseph, went, "Hey, shut up. Just, if you dream that dream, just maybe think about it for a while." His dad, who loved him, is rebuking him. "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down on the ground before you?" His brothers are jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. If Walt Disney has taught us anything, it is this, is that dreams come true. And when they do, they elevate us out from our life as it is into a life that's better. Things, this is, I'm not a Disneyland kind of a person, but a few years ago, my wife and our kids went, and she said, it's like they've made a point to take your imagination and bring it into the world. And so you could feel it and you get this experience of like, oh, the impossible is possible. Those dreams, they bring true love and happiness and acceptance. The good guy always wins in the end. The bad guy always loses. The hero gets the girl. The girl gets the hero, maybe more often than not. Maybe the girl was the hero all along, that kind of stuff. And so we begin to wonder, like, what are the ingredients that make up a good dream? And I don't mean a dream that's light, because here's the problem. Like I said, Walt Disney teaches us it's like a cartoon concept to have a dream, but really this is the real world and dreams don't happen. And We've almost given up on what a dream actually meant in the Bible because we've been taught for so long that it's a cartoon. Here's the reason that movies take an hour and a half. Because if you don't see the struggle that someone went through to get where they're going, it robs us of the value of the end result. Like if a movie started and they go, this is Bob, and Bob is the king. And we go, okay, then what? We're ready for the story to start to unfold. And if the movie was, no, that's it. He's the king. It went really good for him. The movie can't end there. It needed to start there and go somewhere amazing, or it needed to start earlier and go through the process because we want to know that the dream came through struggle and suffering and all the things that we just intrinsically know that accomplishing something should include. Nobody wants to just jump to the end result. We think we do. How did he get there? So what Joseph is doing is Joseph is jumping ahead. It's like God has revealed a little bit of the end to Joseph, and Joseph just skips the whole process. I had a dream. Do you want to know what it is? You're not going to like it. I am awesome, and you serve me. I wonder if he was telling them this dream while he's wearing his physical reminder of being the favorite. I tell my daughter all the time that she's my favorite. And I tell my son all the time that my daughter is my favorite. And if you've ever had dads of little girls, you understand how easy that would be to say. I love them the same. It's not true. But it would be so easy, and stick with me, and I know for a fact that if you think about it long enough, you'll understand what I'm saying, that we've all been through this. It would have been so easy for Joseph to look at God and go, your dream cost me everything. Here's why. Verse 17. So Joseph went out to his brothers and found them near Dothan, but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Almost always, the successful person is aware of the hatred after the fact. It is so like, imagine like a larger than life, successful, beautiful little person. And when they actually deal with jealousy, they don't understand it because they're like, I don't understand. I'm just living. People that are less talented and less happy and less gifted, we understand jealousy maybe a little faster. Joseph obviously does not grasp what is going on in the dynamic here. Verse 19, here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. This is not the sermon, but let me tell you, the moment they decided to kill Joseph proves that they had spent time dwelling on jealousy. They had spent time having this conversation because nobody's going to suggest something that drastic without a ramp up to it. The way that you talk, the thoughts that you foster matter. It will lead you to whatever direction you want to go. Speaking of dreams, so many times the reason we're not pursuing what's positive is because we're dwelling on what is negative. Side note. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe. How long into the attack do you suppose it was before Joseph was like, I think they're serious. Hey guys, what's going on? What are you doing? What's going on? They stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing. It's one thing to have it. It's another thing to just rub it in everyone's faces. Hey guys. They took him and threw him into a cistern. The cistern was empty and there was no water in it. There's some foreshadowing here about the son being buried and raised from the dead, and it's just one of those little almost wink side notes to the story of Jesus later. But here's the point: while Joseph was getting to work on his dreams, now here's the problem that most people will face. If God gives you some sort of a dream of your life, or a goal, or a purpose, or a passion, or whatever the case may be, you almost never understand it. Almost never does he give someone the steps on how to get there. It's almost like sometimes we get like a sniff or a whiff of the finish line, but we have no idea how to start working on it. I think a lot of people are going, I feel like I'm destined for more, but I don't know what to do. And so Joseph just is like, he's getting to work on his dream. But while he's getting to work on his dream, God is getting to work on Joseph. I think sometimes God is working on you while you're distracted working on something else, and you don't realize that the process is already underway. Brandon Grindle, I was going over some of this with him just a minute ago, and Brandon Grindle showed me this quote, and I love it. Pablo Picasso said, every act of creation is first of all an act of destruction. And here's what I mean by that. Lacey pointed it out too. There's that verse in the Bible that says a kernel is born into a ground. The dream of life is born into the soil, but the kernel dies. The shell dies first so that the life that's inside it, the destruction, gives birth to creation. And I think what we see in Joseph, they go, okay, we can't just let him die. A little moment of, okay, hang on a second. We're not going to let him die. We'll sell him into slavery. Joseph gets a dream, starts to try to make it happen somehow, and is crushed. And it would have been so easy for him, as he's sitting in the cistern and being sold into slavery, it would be so easy for him to say what I know that we have thought, and maybe you've even said it, this dream has cost me everything. This dream cost me everything. It's like I wish I would have never even got the dream in the first place. It would have been so much easier if I had no purpose and no ambition and no passion. But the problem was this. The dream was not what caused the problem. Joseph's immaturity was. It was Joseph's decisions. To hold yourself accountable. It was Joseph's decisions that cost him, not the dream. The dream was not the problem. It was Joseph. And if your dream is winning, we're going to get more into this next week. But if your ultimate dream is just to lord it over people, there's a C.S. Lewis quote that says, pride takes no joy in having something, only having more of it than the next guy. If your dream is to be in superiority over everyone, God's going to be a constant source of frustration for you. And if there was a little element of what Joseph was experiencing was someday I'm going to be better than all of you, God goes, I'll fix that along the way. Dreams are always, and like I said, I know that I'm saying the word dreams, and I know that at a glance it's easier to kind of dismiss. When I say dreams, what I mean is a purpose for your living, a reason, a justification for your existence, because you're aware that you're taking up resources, you're breathing in the air, you're eating food, you're existing in the world, but then why? What is the purpose? What is our justification for existence? And we all want, guys, men's Bible study at 7 o'clock on Thursdays there in Butte, here in Butte. Here's what I want you guys to talk about is this. I want to consider the fact that as men, and I can't speak for a woman's perspective, I can speak for my own, we want to be drawn to more. We want to be drawn into something bigger than we are. We want to be a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. We want to believe that there's a dream and a purpose and a passion, but those things exist uphill. They exist uphill from where we are currently. More discipline, more wisdom, more knowledge, this process, this Herculean effort that I'm going to go through all of this suffering and all these hard times, and something better than I am now is going to emerge. And yet, going back to Walt Disney, what we're told is our dreams will give us the things that are currently downhill from our current selves. I hope I'm making sense. The Walt Disney version of a dream is you'll have rest and relaxation, and you'll have superiority, and you'll have comfort and power and acceptance. And the problem is those two things it's oil and water. It's like, God, we feel drawn to something bigger, but yet we're in the back of our minds thinking that if we accomplish those, then we'll be downhill. We want something that makes us better, but it gives us something that doesn't require us to be better at all. I wonder in Joseph's mind if clarity for the end result, if God would have told him the details of the end result, if that would have helped him through the process. And I wonder if maybe that's why God did. I almost wonder if God had to give him almost a smell of the end result. Granted, he messed it all up, but that had to have been what he clung to when he was thrown into a pit or sold into slavery, or then he's promoted, but then he's back into prison again. I think that God had to give him a little smell of like, hey, this is all going somewhere that's worth it. And I think that's the point of this, is that you are being called uphill to something better, and it's worth it. It's very wordy, but Lacey says like, hey, if you'll put something like a hook, if you'll put like something that rhymes, as much as you hate it, people will remember it. This is as close as we'll probably get. Which ingredient? Is it the Joseph of the coat of many colors? Is that the real me? Is that the ingredient of my dream that is actually the real me? Is it fighting with my family? Is that real me? This chaos, this frustration that seems to follow me, is that the real me? Is that the real Joseph? Is that who I'm actually going to be? Is it in a pit? As Joseph is sitting in the pit, is he going, is this the real me? How many times in your life have you been, maybe your job doesn't work out and you go, am I a failure? A marriage doesn't work out and you go, am I a failure? Something goes well, you get promoted. Am I a winner? See what I mean? We're trying to decide which one of these ingredients is the actual dream. Is it victory? Is it success? Is it, the dream I had as a child? Which ingredient is the real dream? Which one is the real me? We had some friends growing up when I was a kid, and they were Cajuns, and I would love to demonstrate a Cajun accent, and I'm not going to. The real deal Cajuns, Southern Louisiana, the whole Cajun culture, and they used to make my favorite thing that they used to cook, because if you've never had Cajun cooking, actual Cajun cooking, not like the commercialized, if you've ever had true, genuine cooking in Louisiana from people who know what they're doing, they make what's called a jambalaya, and jambalaya is my absolute favorite, and here's why. Is each ingredient is laid out on the table, but they get added in different forms and at different times in the process. Like it's almost like a puree. If you think of like a puree that's crushed and made into a paste, and that's kind of the idea behind jambalaya. Some ingredients are added whole. Shrimp, put shrimp in, they go in whole. But then you've got other things that are crushed first. These spices or these peppers or whatever, and they're dried, and the drying process allows them to be crushed more effectively. And then as they're crushed and then added in, the thing is like maybe in its original form it's crushed and it's no longer that, but the flavor of what was there as it's crushed allows it to permeate in throughout the rest of whatever you're going to cook. There are things that are softened by the boiling. There's some things that are hardened, but here's what you're left with. What you're left with in the end, what you're left with is a conglomeration that is better than each individual ingredient. Any one of those things is not as good as the whole, and the whole, the jambalaya, what you're left with, wouldn't be as good without each one of those individual seasonings that go into it. Didn't think we were going to talk about jambalaya at church today, did you? There's a story about Job, and we think of the dream as like, I want to gain more, and I want to be the victor, and the hero gets the girl, and that sort of thing. I want to be wealthy and accepted. And yet one of the heroes of the Bible is a guy named Job, and his story went the opposite. He was here, and God allowed everything he had to be taken away, even his health and his friends were doubting him. And see, when we're a hero, everybody's like, how did you do it? Walt Disney tells me that when I accomplish my hero status, I'm going to be loved and accepted. I might even get carried out on everybody's shoulders. And yet, sometimes the ingredients in our life, God allows a seasoning to be added of defeat and sadness and confusion. I think if we don't recognize that the sadness and the struggle and the confusion are part of this process of getting where God wants us to go, then in those moments we give up. We don't want to go uphill anymore. We just want to stay stationary. We give up and we don't understand the purpose. And here's the most fascinating part, and there will probably be a sermon series about it someday. But when Job asks for an answer, and don't act like we don't do this, we all do. We're all prone to going, okay, God, I can survive anything. Just tell me why. Tell me how it ends. Okay, God, I can survive this. I can get through this. I can survive the crushing process if you'll tell me why. And what's so fascinating to me is in the end, after Job stays faithful, he does it right. He stays faithful. He stays the course, and he gets through this season of just horrible, terrible loss. And he asks God why. God doesn't give him an answer. He never answers the question why. Never. He doesn't give him the answer of why. He gives him a person. Job says, why did all this happen? And God goes, let me tell you who I am. If you're determined to be the hero of your own story, that question seems insufficient. God, why am I going through this? If you can explain it to me, the hero, or I can understand it, then I promise I'll tell everyone. My testimony will be amazing. God goes, I may not ever give you an answer as to why. It's part of the seasoning. It's part of the process. Sometimes it boils. Sometimes it's cooled. Sometimes it goes in whole. Sometimes it's crushed. Sometimes it's up. Sometimes it's down. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's bad. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose. I'm cooking. I'm making something here. What is it? You wouldn't understand it if I told you. In fact, the times when God does give somebody the answer in advance, we usually end up in a pit and sold to slavery, messing up our own dream. I think sometimes we forget. We remember all things work together for the good. What does all things work together for the good mean? That doesn't mean only the good things. It means everything works together for the good. And some of the frustrating times have to be boiled out over time. But we also forget that even though he's working to our benefit, sometimes that means he's even willing to work through our own discomfort even resistance. Sometimes God continues to cook in the middle of us going, no. Yes. That's why it's so hard to live for God without surrender, is because he'll take you places you don't want to go. He'll take you through seasons you don't want to go through. He'll add ingredients to your life that you don't want. He'll take things away that you want to keep. He'll add things that you don't want to accept. I mean, that's the difficulty of loving Jesus through this process, is that you can't grasp the end result. Sometimes dreams are the most devastating element of following Jesus. It's like, why did you even give me a dream in the first place? Why don't I just settle in? And he goes, just a little bit of that. Rephidim, and I've talked about it before. I've always said that if I get a tattoo, it's going to be the word Rephidim. Rephidim was a place called rest, and they go, man, once I get there. Tell me this doesn't sound like a dream. Man, if I win the lottery, ooh. I have people, and I know they mean well. They say all the time, hey, if I win the lottery, I'm going to tithe. And it's almost like they're like, do you hear that? Your church? Oof, boy, God, what you could do with that money. Rephidim was that. Rephidim was the lottery. And when we get to Rephidim, there's going to be rest, and it's going to be great. We're tired of being in the desert. We're tired of this season of our life. We're tired of the job being difficult. We're tired of the marriage being difficult. We're tired of the kids being mouthy. We're tired, all the things that people go through. But when we get there, it's going to be better. My wife is going to see it my way. My kids are going to be respectful. The money's going to be great. If we could just get to rest. And the problem is, rest is downhill. Rest almost is never the thing that makes you better. Comfort, self-reliance, options, those are almost never the things that draw us into something better than we are. But I know this about human nature. If they would have got to Rephidim and Rephidim would have had what they expected, they would have never pursued further to the promised land. It says that the Amalekites attacked at Rephidim, and the Amalekites, it's interesting, they attacked at a time where the Israelites were the most tired. There's something there. We'll talk about it some other day, but just know that sometimes your physical weakness is the greatest opportunity, the surrender of like, I give up. Sometimes God does his best spiritual work in physically tired people. Genesis 45, let's skip ahead. Joseph goes up and down, and I mean, all the things that he goes through, and then he's elevated again. And actually, Joseph's story kind of does follow an interesting movie. I would love, the movie of Joseph's life would be interesting, and here's why. He goes to verse 3, and it says that the brothers, there's been a drought. If you haven't heard this story, I'm assuming most of you have, but if you haven't heard this story, there's a drought in his homeland, and his brothers come to Egypt. Joseph has been elevated to second in charge again, the second time. First time he got thrown in prison because he wouldn't sleep with his boss's wife. It's a whole Hollywood thing. But he's been re-elevated. He said, hey, there's going to be a drought. He interpreted this dream, and there's going to be a drought. And because there's a drought for 7 years, let's prepare for this 7 years. And so they have plenty, and it's all stored up. And really, he's not only saving Egypt, his brothers come, and he's given the opportunity to save his brothers' lives because of the position of power that he's been elevated to. Now, remember, in the beginning, he thought, I'm going to be elevated, and you're going to worship me. You're going to bow to me. Sounds good. I like that dream. Let's do it. Where do I sign? So verse 3 says, Joseph said to his brothers, they didn't recognize him. He had changed so much. He had become such an Egyptian that they didn't even recognize him. Sitting in a room talking to him, and he's speaking a different language. They didn't even recognize him. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Doesn't this sound like a Tarantino moment in a movie where you're like, here comes the revenge. And here's what sucks about being people. Revenge feels so good in the moment. There's a part of us that wants to just say, yeah, Joseph, they sold you into slavery. They threw you in the pit. They thought you weren't special, but you were. Look around. You obviously were. And look what happened. Let's drive the point home. And so the brothers are obviously thinking this. They're obviously aware of the fact that, hey, he's in a position of power. We can't do anything about it. They were terrified at his presence. Remember I said that God puts ingredients in, and then in our lives, if we could think of our lives more like a puree or a jambalaya version of life where God says, I'm going to add every season of life until something is better, and it's going to be to the benefit of those around you. Your life is going to be poured out like an offering to the hero who is Jesus. Jesus is the hero of the story, not us. And I think sometimes when we forget that, we don't understand the process. And he's going, no, I'm going to make something special of your life. And it's going to be a mixture of all these ingredients. Joseph said to his brothers, remember, last time he saw them, he probably said, you can't throw me in this pit. I'm special. can't take my coat. That's mine. It's because I'm amazing. Have you ever known somebody that's like, they were raised with such privilege that somehow they began to think that they'd earned it, but they hadn't done anything, but they knew they were special, but they didn't know why. That's the condition that Joseph was in when he went into the pit. I'm special. I'm above all you. Why? I don't know. I just am. That's how he goes into the pit. The next time they see him, he says this, I'm your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here. Oh. He goes into the pit arrogant and puffed up and resentful. And the next time they see him, he's just pouring out grace. He is pouring out this Jesus-flavored answer because his life has been this process that led him. He wasn't special because he was wearing the coat. He was special because God had a call on his life. In the condition that he was in as he went into the pit, it wasn't really all that great. But he reemerges through this whole cooking process as something that can pour out a story of Jesus that says, even though you don't deserve it, I'm going to give it to you. Listen to this. Don't be angry with yourselves. That is grace. If he goes, I'm not going to punish you, but you should feel terrible. That's better than nothing. But he goes, don't be mad at yourself. Don't be mad at yourself for selling me here because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. You want to talk about somebody who went uphill. This guy went way uphill from a mouthy, childish, selfish, immature little brat. He goes uphill to somebody who now he's in the position of power, but he's not utilizing. He's not the hero of the story. What he's saying is, I'm just a part of this like you. We are collectively this creation, this puree of all the broken, crushed pieces that's telling a really cool story. Listen to this. For 2 years now, there's been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and no reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by great deliverance. Ready for this? Here it is. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of the entire household, and ruler of all of Egypt. I think sometimes we want the win for ourselves. We want the payoff moment where the people who betrayed us have to face the reckoning and we're like, If you ever feel that way, don't beat yourself up. It's human nature. Like when somebody just cuts you off on the road going way too fast and then they get pulled over and you're like, hey. We love that. We want that moment in our natural state. Joseph gets that moment. He goes, no, we're good. I was a part of the story the same as you. It's a hero who has been humbled by the process. He's more humbled. He's the kind of hero that we all want. Somebody goes, no, it's not me, it's God. See, it's like that David moment. David has these mighty men and they go fight through the lions and they get him water from this well just because they love him so much and they bring it back to him and he goes, you risked your lives for this, for me. I'm not gonna drink it. I'm gonna pour it out as an offering to God. That's what a hero looks like. It's not the guy who gets the girl and wins and becomes everything that we were in our original state. It says, no, I go through this complete death, this destruction that causes creation so that I'm better than I ever was. The things that you want today become better and more reliable. You become this thing that can be trusted and loved. And so that even the things that you want, here's the payoff. The ingredients of a dream are that we change so much that what we want out of the dream changes also. It's interesting to me that the Bible says the fruit of the Spirit, because at our glance, you would think it says the fruits of the Spirit, but it's given to us in puree form. It says love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, long-suffering, self-control. But they're all mixed in and they're crushed and they're broken until the flavor, the smell, that all remains, but it's this thing that you present to the world better than how you came into it. You make the world a better place, that God's able to do something in your life that drags you uphill through the suffering and through the difficulty and through the hard times, so that no matter what season of life that you're in, it's worth it. Because that's where people die. They die when they go, I don't believe that what is ahead is worth it. That's where we die on the inside. The external crushing becomes an internal crushing because we give up on the fact that God is at work in our lives. It would have been so easy for Joseph to go, this dream ruined my life. No, you were a part of ruining your life. And thank God that he didn't give up on Joseph, and he brings him through this process, because the dream was actually the thing that saved his whole family. Just needed seasoning. It needed time. It needed to be boiled. It needed to be warmed. It needed to be cooled. It needed to have this. It needed to have that. And if we don't trust that God is on our side, working on our behalf, then those moments of discouraging can be overwhelming. Joseph's dream wasn't about the elevation of Joseph. In your dream, whatever that dream is, when you think back to what it is that really is the most passionate, the most exciting, the thing that gets you going, it's not about your elevation. It's about your life telling the story of Jesus to those around you, because that's what fruit is. Fruit is to the benefit of those around the tree. The jambalaya of life is worth it. It's worth it. Life is better uphill. Life is better with a dream. Life is better with a purpose. Your life is better when something is bigger than you, pushing you forward, when the calling goes beyond yourself. There is something so sweet and so enriching about that. But you're not the cook. How do you explain to the ingredients what a jambalaya would look like? That's the whole problem, is that Joseph's capacity to understand his calling needed to expand. And the only way that it expands is by heating it up and growing it and stretching it and going through this process that Joseph wouldn't have signed up for. God said, I have a dream. Here it is. Here's what I'm going to do in your life, Joseph. That's what you cling to in moments of dark desperation, frustration, the times when things seem to not. You know what? This isn't even in the notes, but you know what it does? It keeps you from swinging for the fences. Have you ever known somebody that feels like they're so far behind that they just start making these giant risks trying to get caught back up? That is where we get further behind. And I think if we understand that God is at work in our lives, sometimes God crushes something, but the flavor of it remains. Sometimes God puts things in exactly like they were. But if we believe that God's at work, we stop taking the unnecessary risks. We stop trying to manage the control of our lives, and the peace and the patience and the kindness and the goodness. All of a sudden, it starts to re-emerge in our lives as a better version of what we went in as. What are the ingredients of a dream? The ingredients of a dream are the entire process of your life. When it's all over, you'll look back and you go, I wouldn't want it any other way. The struggle, the difficulty, the good times, the bad times. Which one's the real me? It's all me. I'm jambalaya. I'm a puree. I'm the result of all of it. There's not one single piece that makes me more or less, but they all get included. And God goes, I'm going to tell an amazing story through your life. Let's pray. Lord, I think of my own youth, my young years, and all the times when passion and ambition and purpose and all the things that I was pursuing. I look back and I hear the story of Joseph, and it just feels familiar to me. God, the process of being broken and crushed, that doesn't destroy, it actually adds flavor. Lord, I pray for people who have started to face internal crushing. People who have stopped believing that you're doing something in their life. People who have stopped pursuing with passion. People who've started to wonder if the suffering is going to be worth it. God, for the difficult times, Lord, help us to be reminded that ultimately this life is just the warm-up. That everything that we're experiencing, it's like a practice run for eternity. Your word says that you're close to the brokenhearted, and God, I think that without that we don't survive. If you're not close to us in our moments of being brokenhearted, we don't survive. God, we need something that reminds us that you are making a creation out of our life that is included with all of the ingredients: the passing, the failing, the good, the bad. God, don't let us get so preoccupied with rest and comfort that we sacrifice the promised land that you've got for us. Help us to wake up in the morning with passion, knowing that you are at work in our lives. Tend to the details as though things are being watched. Not swing for the fences and gamble and risk and give up on things like character and values and integrity, all the things that we would hold to if we knew it was going somewhere good. Help our lives to be a puree of all the fruits of the Spirit, that we produce a sweet flavor in the life of those around us. Pray in Jesus' name, amen.